The wounded warrior in silver, the smoke was thick. It burned his eyes and made it hard to breathe. The sky above was dark, filled with the sound of distant ships and falling metal. Broken machines and bodies were scattered across the land. He moved carefully, stepping over wires and shattered helmets. Every step echoed in the silence that followed the battle. His name was John. He was a human field medic, one of the last left in this war zone. His scanner beeped. There was life nearby. He followed the signal, walking past crushed armor and scorched earth. Behind a fallen wall, half buried under rubble, he found it, a tall silver suit, cracked and sparking. He paused. The suit was alien, large and powerful, the kind their soldiers wore into battle. They were known as the Caldari. Most Caldari hated humans. They called humans weak, soft, unworthy of the stars. John had seen what they did to prisoners. He should walk away. But the scanner blinked again. The one inside was still alive. He stepped closer. The silver armor was dented and blackened by fire. One arm was missing. The chest plate was damaged and faint air came from its vents. He crouched and touched the metal. It was warm. Then he heard it, a whisper. Weak. Almost broken. Please. Take off my armor. His eyes widened. The voice was female. Soft, yet filled with pain. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. He hesitated. He knew their rules. Caldari armor was sacred, never removed by enemies, not even in death. Only family or battle sisters could unseal it. If he touched it, he could start another war. Can't breathe, the voice cracked. Again, more urgent now. John looked around. No one else was near. The battlefield was quiet. The fighting had moved to the eastern front. They had a few minutes. He placed his medkit down and reached for the emergency unlock tool. I'm going to help you, he said softly. Hold on. The armor hissed as he activated the tool. The first latch opened. Steam escaped. The second latch made a sharp clicking sound. His hands moved quickly but gently. The armor was heavy, made of a strange alloy that shimmered in the dim light. As the chest plate loosened, he saw flashes of pale skin beneath, bruised, bleeding, and marked with strange glowing lines. Not tattoos. Something else. Something alive. Finally, the main lock opened with a hiss. The armor fell open. What John saw inside made him freeze. She was young, barely older than 20 in human years. Her skin was smooth and light purple, almost glowing. Her hair, dark silver, stuck to her face from sweat and blood. Her eyes were closed and her lips were parted as she gasped for air. Her ribs moved, fast, her breathing uneven. She was beautiful. But more than that, she looked human. Too human. He touched her neck. Pulse. Weak, very weak. He grabbed a breathing mask from his pack and placed it over her mouth. Her chest lifted slowly. Then again. A few seconds passed. Her eyes opened just a little. They were deep violet. She looked at him. Her lips moved again. Thank you. And then she passed out. John wrapped her in a thermal blanket. He checked for internal injuries, broken ribs, burns, maybe internal bleeding. She needed help, fast. A red light blinked on his scanner. Movement. John's head shot up. Someone was coming. He looked down at her. She was unarmed, helpless, and stripped of her sacred armor. If her people found her like this, they would kill her for shame, and him for touching her. He had to move. He packed his tools, lifted her, gently, and started walking. She was heavier than she looked, but he didn't stop. Not even when his legs shook. Not even when the ground behind him trembled. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know why she was fighting. But he knew one thing. She asked for help. And he answered. The face behind the mask John didn't stop running until his lungs burned, and his arms went numb. The alien girl felt like dead weight in his arms, but he didn't let go. Her skin was cool now, her breath slow and shallow. He knew he was losing her. Time was against him. He needed shelter, somewhere safe, somewhere he could lay her down and work. He found it. A half-collapsed bunker hidden beneath the hills. Broken panels hung from the ceiling. Moss grew through cracks in the floor. But it was quiet. More important, it was hidden. He gently placed her on a metal slab that used to be a table. He switched on a flickering light and leaned in. Her face was still. No expression. Just soft lines and quiet pain. Her body twitched slightly when he removed more armor. He spoke to her as he worked, hoping his voice would keep her tied to this world. You're safe now. I don't know your name, but you're safe. He used his last med foam to seal the wounds on her side. Some of the cuts were deep, glowing faintly blue, like they weren't meant to be closed by human tools. He didn't care. He tried anyway. The moment her chest stopped rising for longer than a breath, he gave her oxygen and pounded her chest lightly until it came back. When she finally took a slow, long inhale, he nearly cried from relief. But then, something strange happened. The rest of her armor loosened, not just from his tools but from inside. It was like her body was letting go on its own. The armor unlocked in sections he hadn't touched. Pieces slid off and clattered to the ground, revealing more of her skin. Smooth, pale, covered in a network of thin, glowing lines that looked like veins made of light. John stepped back. He'd treated hundreds of wounded soldiers, human and alien. He had seen every kind of injury. But he had never seen this. Her body was marked in ways he didn't understand. The lines pulsed with life, like they were part of her. Symbols were carved into her shoulders and along her spine, as if burned, and he could feel something in the room shift, like a pressure behind his eyes. Something about her. It wasn't just strange. It was forbidden. Then her eyes opened, wide and sharp. She tried to sit up but winced. He quickly held her shoulders. Easy, you're hurt, just stay still. She looked at him for a long time. Not with fear, not with anger, but with something heavier. Shame. Her voice was soft, but clear. You saw it. Yeah, John replied, confused. Your wounds? Your skin? She turned her head away. No. Not that. The shame beneath it. John didn't understand. I don't see shame. I see someone who almost died. I see someone who asked for help. That's all. Her eyes filled with moisture. She blinked fast, refusing to let it fall. You shouldn't have removed the armor, she said finally. He tensed. I had to. You couldn't breathe. You would have died. That armor was not just protection. It was prison. It hid what I am, what they made me into. He sat down beside her. Who are they? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and gently touched his hand. Her fingers trembled. No one was supposed to see me like this. No one outside the Kaldari, especially not a human. John didn't pull his hand away. Why? Because if they know what I carry under my skin, they'll hunt me until I'm ash. Her words hung in the air like smoke after fire. He tried to make sense of it, but nothing clicked. All he saw was a girl, scared and hurt, but still breathing, still fighting. Then I won't let them find you, John said. She looked at him again. This time, her face changed. The fear was still there, but so was something new. Something small and fragile. Hope. Then her body shook. She gasped and fell back. The wounds had reopened. Blood, black and shining, spilled from her side. John jumped into action. He grabbed gauze, sealed it tight, injected another dose of med-stim. She passed, out again. This time she didn't whisper. She didn't move. He watched her chest rise and fall slow and steady. He stayed beside her, guarding her like a shadow. Outside, far in the distance, an alien search drone hovered low. It scanned the fields, looking for her armor's missing signal. They were coming, but John wasn't afraid. He didn't know who she really was. He didn't know what they had done to her, but he knew this much. He had already seen the face behind the mask, and he would protect it, no matter what. The hiding place beneath stars. The wind howled over the hills as the last of the daylight faded into a cold, alien night. John had wrapped the girl in 2 layers of thermal foil and placed her gently onto a hover stretcher he built from salvaged parts. The machine hummed softly, rising a few inches above the ground. It wasn't fast, but it was quiet, and right now that mattered more than anything. Behind them, far away across the ash-covered fields, soft lights flickered, the Caldari patrols. They moved like silent shadows across the land, sweeping every wreck, scanning for armor signatures and heat trails. John knew he had little time. The moment they realized the armor had been opened and abandoned, they'd track it, and they'd kill to hide the truth. He kept his path low, weaving through canyons and narrow trails. The girl, her name still unknown to him, remained unconscious, her body stiff and pale but breathing. Every few minutes John would stop, check her pulse, rewrap her wounds, and whisper, "Stay with me. I'm not done saving you yet." Finally, after hours of climbing and ducking, he found it, a cave hidden behind a collapsed comm tower, half buried in rock. The opening was narrow, nearly invisible, but inside it stretched deep, cool, dark, and quiet. Perfect. He pulled the stretcher inside and sealed the entrance with a thermal tarp. Inside, he lit a faint red lamp, just enough to see without drawing attention. He made a bed out of old ship blankets and placed her there gently. She stirred, murmuring something in a language he didn't understand. But then her eyes opened, slowly. Her voice came like a breath. "Where are we?" "Safe," John replied. "For now." She tried to sit up. Pain hit her like a wave, and she fell back with a sharp gasp. "You shouldn't move," he said. "Your ribs are cracked. Maybe worse. They're looking for me." "I know. You should have left me," she said weakly. "You should have saved yourself." John looked at her in the soft red light. Even wounded, even broken, her face had a strange power. Not just beauty, but history. Every scar, every glowing line, every quiet breath told a story he didn't know. But he wanted to. "My name is John," he said simply. "And I don't leave people to die." She blinked slowly, processing his words. Then she whispered, "Sarah." "Sarah," he repeated. "That's your name?" She nodded once. "Sarah Valerie, second blade of the Caldari Guard, exiled traitor, and something else. You don't sound proud of that." "I'm not." A long silence passed. Outside, wind moved over the hills like a whisper from the stars. Inside, the two sat under that quiet red glow, both breathing slow, both thinking deeply. John leaned forward. "You called yourself a traitor." "Because I protected a human child once," she said. "He was lost during a raid. My orders were to end him. Instead, I hid him, fed him, got him back to your camp. When command found out, they branded me with light. These marks," she touched the glowing lines on her skin, "are not honor. They are warning." John stared at her for a moment. He'd seen the Caldari marks before, but always from a distance, never on someone still alive. He always thought they were for war heroes. Now he knew better. "You saved one of us," he said quietly. She gave a bitter smile. "I broke the code. I shamed my unit. I was given armor that could not be opened. Not until death. But then I saw you, on the battlefield, helping your wounded, dragging your captain through flames. And something in me cracked again." She looked away. "I didn't want to die a weapon. I wanted to be seen." John's voice was soft. "You were." Sarah turned to him again, her eyes shimmering. "You're not afraid of me. Should I be? They trained me to kill your kind, and yet you asked me to take off your armor." She nodded slowly, her voice nearly a whisper. "Because in that moment, I didn't want to be Caldari. I just wanted to live." Another silence passed. This time it wasn't empty. This time, it was full of something else, trust. John stood and walked to the back of the cave. There was a narrow opening that led upward to a crack in the rocks above. He climbed carefully, then looked out. The stars were shining, thousands of them, quiet and far away, like cold diamonds scattered across the black sky. He sat there for a while thinking. About war. About choices. About Sarah. He had come to this war thinking he'd be a helper, a medic, someone who saved lives but never changed them. Now, one alien girl, half alive and marked with shame, had changed him. He looked down the cave again. She was sleeping now, peacefully for the first time, and he knew this wasn't just about saving her anymore. This was about saving what was left of something greater. Humanity. Mercy. Truth. Memories written in scars. The fire had burned low, giving only a soft glow inside the cave. John sat with his back against the stone wall, staring into the small flickering light. Sarah lay just a few steps away, her body wrapped in old blankets, her face calm but pale. Her breathing was steady, but every few minutes her fingers twitched like they were remembering pain that her voice would not speak. John hadn't slept. His hands still shook from everything they had gone through. Part of him wanted to run, back to the outpost, back to human lines, back to safety. But every time he looked at her face, at the strange blue lines on her skin that pulsed gently in the dark, he knew something had changed. This wasn't just another wounded soldier. This wasn't just another rescue. This was personal now. She stirred. Slowly, she opened her eyes. The firelight danced in them, making the violet glow seem alive. John leaned forward and offered her water. She drank in slow sips, never breaking eye contact. "You didn't run," she said softly. "I stayed," he answered. "You're not alone." She looked down at her own hands, thin, strong, still trembling. "I want to show you something," she said. John didn't answer, just waited. She sat up with effort and slowly unwrapped the bandages from her arms. Beneath them, beneath the bruises and cuts, were long, curved scars. Not from battle, not random. These were carved, clean, sharp, symmetrical, like someone had taken their time. "These," she whispered, "were the first." "First what?" "First lesson. I was 10. They said I hesitated during training, said fear must be removed, so they gave me these to remind me what fear costs." John said nothing. He felt sick, but he let her speak. She pointed to a deep mark that ran from her shoulder to her ribs. "This one," she said, "came when I asked what it meant to love a human." "You asked that?" "Yes. I was foolish, curious. They punished me in front of my sisters, said I was weak. They burned that thought into my skin." John swallowed hard. "Why didn't you leave?" Sarah gave a bitter laugh. "Leave? We're born in chambers, John. Grown in tanks, raised by command, trained before we can even walk. There is no home to run to. There is only duty." John moved closer and gently touched her wrist. She didn't pull away. "You still have a heart," he said. "Do I?" she whispered. "Or did they program that too?" He shook his head. "No, no machine could make you do what you did. You made a choice." Her lips trembled. Her voice lowered to a whisper. "I'm afraid of what I feel now. Afraid of what your kindness is doing to me. It's breaking something inside. Maybe it's not breaking," he said. "Maybe it's fixing." She looked away, silent. The cave was quiet again. Only the crackle of the fire and the faint hum of distant drones filled the air. But even that quiet felt heavy, like the silence after a storm that hadn't fully passed. Then Sarah turned back to him, her face serious. "John, if they find us, they won't ask questions. They won't take me alive. They'll end it in seconds, and they'll erase you." "I know. So why stay?" John breathed deeply and looked into her eyes. "Because you're worth saving. Not just your body, your truth, your story, everything they tried to hide under those scars." A long pause followed. Her lip quivered slightly, and then without warning a single tear slid down her cheek, silent, glowing faintly under the firelight. She wiped it away quickly, like it was shameful, but John smiled gently. "That's the strongest thing I've seen anyone do," he said. "What?" "Let a tear fall." They sat there, together in the dark, warriors from two worlds, joined not by weapons or orders, but by wounds that needed healing. Above them, stars moved slowly across the sky, and deep below, in the warmth of stone and flickering flame, two broken souls found the first pieces of peace. But peace never lasted long in a galaxy built on fear, and outside, far in the distance, a tracker beacon blinked to life. They had been found. Hunted and unarmed, the air inside the cave shifted. It was subtle at first, a faint vibration in the stone, a pressure in the ears, a sudden chill that didn't come from the cold. John felt it before he heard it. Something had changed. He stood, slowly, placing a hand on the wall. The rock beneath his fingers trembled, not from nature, but from machines. Drones. They had found them. Sarah's eyes opened instantly. She didn't need an explanation. Her instincts were sharper than his. She sat up, biting her lip as pain shot through her body. But she didn't scream. Didn't even grunt. The silence was something the Kaldari were trained in. A silence made of survival. "How long do we have?" she whispered. John checked the scanner. 2 red dots, approaching fast. 3 minutes, maybe less. She nodded. No panic, no fear, just calculation. "They'll use ground scan pulses, thermal. We'll pick up the body heat even through the rock. We need to move." John grabbed a small supply bag and helped her stand. She leaned on him, her body stiff and heavy. He could feel the weakness in her limbs. The pain was eating through her strength like acid. Together, they moved toward the narrow tunnel at the back of the cave. It sloped upward sharply. John had explored it the day before just in case. It led to a crack in the cliffside, just wide enough to crawl through, hidden by jagged rocks and overgrown moss. It wasn't a path. It was an escape, and barely that. "Stay low," John said. They crawled. Each movement was slow and painful. Every shift of her weight made Sarah wince, but she didn't stop. Behind them, a faint pulse shook the air. The first drone scan. "They're reading the cave now," Sarah muttered. "We have one shot." They reached the top of the tunnel. John pulled the cover aside. Cold wind rushed in. The outside was darker than before, no moon, just stars and the faint glow of drone lights bouncing off the terrain below. "We go now," he said. They slipped out and pressed against the rocks. John scanned the area. No patrols on foot, just 2 drones, circling low. One passed overhead, humming like a wasp the size of a car. John pulled Sarah into a small trench just as the beam swept over them. They held their breath. The beam paused for a second, then moved on. Not detected. Not yet. John looked at Sarah. Her face was pale, her body trembling. She was losing strength fast, but she looked back at him, calm and focused. "I'm slowing you down," she whispered. "You should go." "Not happening," he said. "They'll catch us both. Then, they catch us together." Her lip twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. They moved again, step by step, rock by rock, toward an old structure at the base of the hill, a broken satellite station half swallowed by Earth. John had passed it once before. It had no power, no signals. But it had walls, maybe even a basement. They reached it after 20 long minutes of crawling and limping through shadows. Inside, the place smelled of rust and smoke. Old wires hung from the ceiling. Broken screens flickered with the memory of power long gone. John helped Sarah down onto a pile of dusty cushions. "Rest," he said. "I'll find something useful." He moved quickly through the rooms, opening rusted cabinets, scanning old tech. Most of it was dead, but deep in the back, a power relay still blinking faintly, and next to it an access terminal, not military, civilian class, ancient Kaldari design. John called out, "Sarah, can you read this interface?" She dragged herself over, leaned against the desk, and stared at the screen. "I can," she said slowly. "This is pre-exile tech. I trained on these when I was still a cadet." Her fingers moved over the keys. Her eyes began to glow, faint at first, then brighter. John stepped back. Her marks, the ones carved into her skin, pulsed with the same light. "What are you doing?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Her voice was different now, stronger, colder. "They'll keep coming. Even if we run, they'll track my signal. I have one way to stop them." "How?" She turned to face him. "By turning their own eyes blind." The screen flashed. The drone lights outside flickered, then went dark. She had shut down the local net for now. But John could see the toll it took. Her nose bled. Her hands shook. "Sira, don't stop me," she said. "We need time. I just bought us 30 minutes. Maybe less." John caught her as she fell. She didn't faint, not fully, but her strength vanished. He carried her back to the cushions, laid her down, and wiped the blood from her face. "You're not just a soldier," he said, softly. "You're something more." "I was built to be a weapon," she murmured. "But I was born to be free." And then her eyes closed. Outside, the stars kept shining, but inside, time was slipping away, and with it, their last hope. The revenge protocol, the silence inside the station was no longer peaceful. It was heavy. It was waiting. John sat beside Sarah, watching her chest rise and fall slowly. Her skin glowed faintly again, but this time it was dim, like a light struggling to stay alive. She had spent too much energy hacking the Kaldari net. He could see it in her hands, now trembling even in sleep. Her body was giving up, but her spirit wasn't. He looked at the flickering terminal screen. The local drones were down. Their sensors were blocked. They had a small window of safety, but it wasn't enough. They needed a way out. A real escape, not just hiding in shadows. The Kaldari fleet was still in orbit. More drones would reboot. Ground troops would arrive. And they weren't coming for war. They were coming to erase what John had seen, what she had become. He heard movement behind him, not from outside and from the cushions. Sarah sat up, slow and stiff. Her eyes were open now, sharper, focused, no longer cloudy from pain. Something had changed. "You were right," she said, quietly. "About what?" he asked. "I'm not just a soldier, not just a prisoner of their code. I was born with something they feared." John walked over. "What do you mean?" She looked at her arms, at the glowing lines carved deep into her flesh. They pulsed softly, in rhythm with her breath. "These are not just punishment, not just marks. They're bindings, seals to control what's inside me." John felt a cold chill pass through him. "Inside you?" "Information," she said. "Code, a living algorithm, ancient, forbidden. They injected it into me when I was just a child, said it was to make me loyal, but it's more than that." She stood slowly, with effort. The light from her skin grew brighter. "It's a key, and now the locks are breaking." John looked at the console. "You can do more than shut drones down, can't you?" Sierra nodded once. "I can shut down the fleet." John took a step back. "All of it?" "Not forever," she said. "Just long enough." "Long enough for what?" She turned toward the terminal, her voice quiet but strong. "Long enough for the truth to get out." John's heart pounded. He moved beside her. "Sarah, if you do this, they'll kill me," she finished. "Yes," he grabbed her arm. "Then don't. There has to be another way." She looked at him, her face gentle but unshaken. "They erased others like me, one by one. No graves, no names. I am the last one with this code. If I don't use it, they win. Again." "But why you?" John whispered. "Why now?" She smiled, sad and soft, because a human took off my armor and saw me, not as a weapon, not as a mistake, but as a person. The console beeped. The system was ready. Sierra placed both hands on the panel. Her fingers fit perfectly into the old marks carved around the screen. The lights flared. The air thickened. The station began to shake. A low hum built around them, not from machines but from her skin, from her voice, which began to speak in a tongue John couldn't understand. It was not Caldari, not human, older, deeper. Then her eyes went fully white. John stared in awe and terror as the codes appeared on the screen. Ancient symbols rewriting the Caldari fleet systems. Ship by ship, channel by channel. The warships above began to blink out of the sky. Not destroyed, but frozen. Like statues in orbit. Communications fell silent. Weapons shut down. Movement stopped. All of it. But so did she. Sarah gasped and dropped to her knees. Her hands trembled. Blood ran from her nose, again thicker this time. John rushed to catch her. He held her tightly as her body shook. "I've done it," she whispered. "You need to rest," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. She shook her head. "I need to say something." He nodded. She looked into his eyes, her voice shaking. "I always thought I was made to destroy, that everything in me was broken. But you showed me something else. You showed me choice." John felt his throat tighten. "You chose to save the galaxy." "No," she said softly. "I chose to save you." And then her body went limp. John held her close, rocking gently, whispering her name again and again. But she didn't answer. Outside, the stars above began to shift. Human ships were entering orbit. Peace talks had already started in secret, but none of them would know that it began here, in a dead station, in the arms of a man who had nothing, and a girl who gave up everything. The last unsealed truth. The world didn't change with a roar, it changed in silence. The Caldari fleet that once ruled the skies went still like statues of war, frozen above the planet. Weapons that had glowed red with fury were now dark and cold. The command channels went quiet. The orders stopped coming. Something ancient had moved through their systems, something alive and uncontainable, and it had come from her. John sat alone in the broken satellite station, his hands still wrapped around Sarah's body. She hadn't moved for an hour. Her skin no longer glowed. Her breath, if it came at all, was too soft to see. He kept whispering her name as if the sound might bring her back. He cleaned the blood from her face again and again, even though new blood never came. He held her hand like it was made of glass. For a long time, he didn't cry. He just stared. And then, when the sun rose beyond the cliffside and painted her skin with golden light, he broke. Tears came hard and fast, falling onto her cheeks, onto the blanket, onto the cold floor. He wasn't crying just for her. He was crying for everything she had carried alone, for every scar they carved into her, for every part of her she was told to hide, for every choice she had been denied. Until him, and even then she had given her choice away again, to save others. They found him like that hours later, when the human rescue team arrived. A lieutenant stepped into the station and saw the wreckage, the console, and the man sitting in silence. You're John Silas, right?" the officer asked softly. John didn't answer at first. Then he looked up and nodded. The lieutenant looked at the girl in his arms. "Is that her? The Caldari code-bearer?" John nodded again. "Her name was Sarah. Sarah Valerie." The officer's eyes softened. "You did well. You saved more lives than you'll ever know." But John shook his head. "No. She did. The humans took them back to the base. The Cold War that had stretched across the stars began to bend. Messages passed between leaders. Fleets stood down. The Caldari, once fierce and proud, were now fractured. Many confused, some ashamed. A secret buried for years had been exposed. Someone had turned their war machines into silent ghosts, and someone had shown them what it meant to choose mercy over power. John stayed quiet during the debriefings. He answered only what he needed. He didn't speak of the cave or the scars or the night she cried. He kept those memories for himself, not as secrets, but as sacred pieces of her. They asked what she looked like under the armor. He told them, beautiful. They asked what, she said before she died. He answered, thank you. They offered medals, titles, rewards. He refused them all, except one request. He asked for her armor. What was left of it, they gave it to him. Months passed. Peace, slow and fragile, began to bloom. Old enemies lowered their weapons. New rules were written. Some Kaldari leaders were arrested. Some vanished. Others came forward and told the truth. John returned to the battlefield where he had found her. He stood beneath the same sky, holding her armor in his hands. The silver was cracked, burned, and broken, but it still shined in the light. There, on a quiet hill surrounded by tall grass and stone, he buried it. Not as a weapon, not as a war trophy, but as a grave. He placed a small stone above it and carved just a few simple words with his knife. Here lies Sarah Valerie, more than a soldier, more than they deserved. He sat there for a long time, under the same stars they had once looked up at together. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He just remembered. Because in the end, it wasn't about how she died. It was about how she lived, in her final days, free and seen, and finally, unsealed.